Have you ever noticed a really strange phenomenon?
Oh, I'm sure I have, but what specifically?
Well, it's about the feelings we keep completely to ourselves, like the ones we never ever say out loud.
Well, yeah.
Somehow, they always end up feeling the most overwhelmingly intense?
They absolutely do. It's wild how that works.
Right. Well, today on the deep dive, we've got this fascinating stack of psychological research to unpack exactly why your mind does this.
It's such a rich topic.
It really is. We are looking at the architecture of emotional clarity, hidden feelings, and unspoken love.
Yes.
And the mission today for you, the listener, is to move past the poetry of secret crushes, right? We want to look at the actual mechanics of our internal worlds.
The hard science behind the feeling.
Exactly. We're exploring why suppression artificially intensifies emotions, the mind's really dangerous addiction to the concept of maybe, and how to turn a confusing, spinning emotional fixation into profound self-awareness.
Which is something I think everyone needs.
Totally. Okay, let's unpack this. What is actually happening in the brain the moment we decide to keep a strong feeling completely to ourselves?
Well, we really have to look at the cognitive mechanics of secrecy. Because, most of the time, choosing silence starts as just a protective measure.
Like self-preservation.
Exactly. You fear rejection, or maybe you don't want to disrupt a dynamic that currently feels safe.
Or you fall into that trap of waiting for the mythical perfect time to confess.
Right, the perfect time that never actually arrives.
Yeah.
But the critical error we make here is assuming that unexpressed emotion is dormant emotion.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, we tend to think that if a feeling is hidden, it's just like put on pause.
Right, like it's safely tucked away in a drawer somewhere.
Exactly.
Mm.
But the research shows the exact opposite. Because the feeling isn't explicitly expressed, it begins to actively shape your perception
Wait, how does it do that?
through a process of hypervigilance.
So by not saying it, we are actually like telling our brain to pay closer attention to it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Your brain is now running a background application.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Because unspoken affection, it doesn't just announce itself, right? It lives in the pauses between words.
Yeah, and the lingering glances.
Right. So to maintain the secret, your brain has to constantly monitor your own behavior and the other person's behavior.
Which creates a massive cognitive load, I'd imagine.
A huge one.
Huh.
And then your mind becomes highly selective, engaging in confirmation bias.
Oh, right. We see what we want to see.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It starts aggressively highlighting only the details that confirm the hidden feeling, like a specific tone of voice or a prolonged text exchange.
While just completely filtering out anything that contradicts it.
Exactly.
It's like trapping a sound in an empty room.
Oh, I like that.
If you don't open a window to let it out, the sound just bounces off the walls,
Mm.
echoing and amplifying until it just feels deafening.
That's a great analogy. And the reason it echoes is due to a psychological mechanism called rumination.
Rumination. Okay.
Yeah. When an emotion isn't processed externally through communication, it loops internally. You're repeatedly playing out scenarios in your head.
Like practicing conversations in the shower.
Yes. Analyzing past interactions, forecasting future ones. And every time that loop runs, the neural pathways associated with that emotion are strengthened.
Wow. So the repetition itself gives the emotion its heavy, undeniable weight.
Exactly. The silence feeds it.
So if keeping silent is essentially building this like pressure cooker in our minds through this rumination loop, there has to be a breaking point.
Oh, definitely.
What is that trapped looping energy actually doing to our nervous system while we're sitting there pretending everything is fine on the outside?
Well, it creates a state of chronic, low-grade stress. The literature refers to this as the paradox of suppression.
It's a paradox of suppression.
Right, because every time you swallow a word or every time you artificially restrain a natural reaction to this person, you are fighting your own nervous system.
Wow.
Emotion is inherently designed to move, right? The word itself comes from the Latin immovere, meaning to move out or agitate.
So we're literally going against biology.
We are. When you mandate that the emotion stays entirely contained, you trigger what psychologists call ironic process theory.
Wait, is that the classic don't think of a pink elephant concept?
That is the foundational idea, yes.
Right.
By actively trying to suppress the thought or the feeling, you make it hyper-accessible to your conscious mind.
Because you have to think about it to remember not to think about it.
Exactly. The effort of holding it back artificially concentrates it. You're basically pushing a beach ball underwater.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The deeper you push it down to hide it from the surface, the more pressure builds around it, and the more violently it wants to burst upward.
So because of that built-up pressure, your baseline for reacting changes entirely.
Right.
Suddenly, a totally mundane two-word text message carries this unnatural heavyweight. Like you're analyzing a simple hello from every possible angle because the pressure behind your interpretation is just so high.
Precisely. You are feeling the pressure of the container, not just the substance inside it.
That's fascinating.
And your body is actually releasing stress hormones, like cortisol, because you're in a constant state of self-monitoring.
So physiological arousal is very real.
Very real. Your heart beats faster, your palms might sweat, your mind races.
Wait, let me push back on this for a second, though.
Sure.
We're painting suppression as this inherently damaging, stressful thing, but isn't holding it in sometimes just the pragmatic, smarter choice?
In what way?
Well, we tell ourselves it's better this way because life can just continue on the surface as normal without any messy disruptions.
Right, the don't rock the boat mentality.
Exactly. If I don't say anything, I don't ruin a decade-long friendship, or, I don't make the office awkward, the peace is kept.
What's fascinating here is that the peace is kept in the external environment, yes, but we have to distinguish between situational management and emotional reality.
Meaning?
You might be making the correct tactical decision for your workplace or your friend group, sure,
Mm.
but you cannot trick your nervous system into believing the feeling doesn't exist just because you've decided not to act on it.
I see.
The intensity you feel in that moment of suppression is entirely real, but you are misattributing its source.
Misattributing it how? Like, what are we blaming it on?
Well, you tell yourself, I feel so overwhelmed, this must mean my connection to this person is incredibly deep.
Oh, wow.
When in reality, a large percentage of that overwhelming feeling is just the sheer mechanical force of emotional energy being contained with nowhere to go.
That is wild.
You are interpreting the friction of your own suppression as the depth of your love.
That is a massive paradigm shift. We think we're experiencing an epic romance, but we're actually just experiencing our own cognitive friction.
Exactly.
Which raises the question, if this internal pressure is so uncomfortable and it's taxing our nervous system, why doesn't the mind just drop it? Right?
Why do we hold on to the secret so tightly instead of just letting the feeling fade?
To understand the mind's refusal to let go, we really have to look at evolutionary psychology and our brain's absolute intolerance for uncertainty.
It hates not knowing.
It despises it. The human mind is, at its core, a pattern recognition machine. It hates empty spaces and unfinished narratives.
So faced with a gap in information.
It will always prefer to invent a hypothetical story rather than just sit with a void.
We have a biological need to connect the dots, even if we have to draw the dots ourselves.
That's a perfect way to put it. And hidden feelings live entirely in the realm of maybe.
Right. There are no clear, objective boundaries.
None at all. A definitive yes or a definitive no from the object of your affection brings closure.
It defines the reality of the situation.
Yes, which signals to the brain that the pattern is complete and it can finally power down that exhausting background application.
But uncertainty keeps the cognitive loop open.
I'm reminded of the Zeigarnik effect, the idea that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks way better than completed ones.
Yes, absolutely.
It sounds like we're turning a person into an unfinished task.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. Because the situation is unresolved, it stays at the forefront of your working memory.
Wow.
The uncertainty creates a space where hope and doubt continuously collide, keeping your attention completely locked.
And because your attention is locked on a void of actual facts, you begin the process of idealization.
Right. The mind takes those ambiguous fragments we talked about earlier, a lingering glance, an inside joke, and uses them as scaffolding to build a towering fantasy.
It's like the mind is an overly enthusiastic movie director.
Oh, definitely.
You give it a tiny, ambiguous fragment of reality, and it immediately writes an entire Oscar-winning screenplay around it.
Complete with a sweeping soundtrack.
Right. Perfect lighting, character arcs that don't actually exist in real life.
And the director has an unlimited budget for imagination because possibility has no boundaries.
Unlike reality.
Exactly. Reality is limited by logistics, by bad moods, by the actual annoying flaws of the other person.
Yeah, people are messy.
They are. But the possibility you're constructing in your head can expand endlessly. It's tailored perfectly to your desires.
Wait, I'm struggling with the idea that this is inherently a trap, though.
Oh.
Isn't a little mystery necessary for romantic depth? Like, we're always told to keep the mystery alive in relationships.
Sure.
It seems like the imagination plays a crucial role in falling in love in the first place.
There's a vital distinction between the healthy mystery of slowly discovering a complex human being
Hmm.
and the fabricated mystery of a hidden feeling.
Okay, break that down for me.
Healthy mystery unfolds within the bounds of a reciprocal reality. The mystery of a hidden feeling is entirely untested by truth.
Oh, I see.
It has not met the friction of a real-world interaction. You are essentially falling in love with an avatar of this person, a projection that you control completely in your own mind.
So we're falling in love with the screenplay, not the actor.
Precisely. And running that simulation constantly becomes incredibly demanding.
Light bet.
There is a distinct tipping point documented in the literature where the feeling shifts from being a comforting fantasy to a heavy, occupying burden.
What causes that shift?
The core issue driving this shift is an unsustainable imbalance of energy.
Right, because if the energy is only moving in one direction, you're essentially funding a joint bank account all by yourself.
Yes.
Eventually, you're going to go emotionally bankrupt.
That economic analogy is perfect for understanding the emotional toll here. In any realized connection, energy is reciprocal.
You extend a bid for connection, it gets met, and energy returns to you.
Exactly. But with a hidden feeling, you are generating the energy, sustaining the narrative, and experiencing the fallout entirely on your own.
You're making massive psychological investments without any real-world dividends.
And this leads to profound overthinking. You're exhausted because you are doing the emotional labor of two people inside one brain.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If we are putting in all this energy, doing all this work, and getting nothing tangible back,
Yeah.
how do we systematically convince ourselves that this exhausting, draining cycle is actually a sign of profound, epic love?
It's quite the trick of the mind.
Right. It seems like people use their own suffering as proof of the connection's validity.
They absolutely do. And if we look at the broader clinical picture, this happens because we constantly confuse intensity with depth.
Intensity and depth. Okay.
Our culture, particularly our media, actively encourages this confusion.
Like every rom-com ever made.
Exactly. We're taught that love should feel like a consuming fire. But the psychological sources draw a very sharp line between intensity and depth.
So intensity is just a spike in the graph. It's an adrenaline rush.
Intensity rises incredibly quickly, and it's fueled almost entirely by the mechanisms we've just unpacked: cognitive dissonance, uncertainty, ironic process theory, and unmet needs.
It feels overwhelming, so we misinterpret that biological overwhelm as true love.
Yes. Depth, on the other hand, is grounded.
Hmm.
It is a baseline, not a spike.
That makes a lot of sense.
Crucially, depth does not require unanswered questions, secrecy, or a lack of clarity to sustain itself. Depth is born from knowing. Intensity is born from lacking.
Wow. So recognizing that the sheer intensity of your feeling does not automatically equal relational depth is like the first step to dismantling the trap.
Absolutely.
So if you are listening to this right now and you suddenly realize you are caught in this loop of agonizing intensity rather than actual depth, how do you break the cycle?
That's the real challenge.
And let's be realistic here. We want to do this without necessarily having to dramatically confess everything to the person and risk total ruin in our daily lives.
Right.
How do we defuse the bomb without detonating it?
The key is that you have to change what the feeling is pointing at.
Okay.
Right now, your cognitive load is entirely focused outward, at the other person. The ultimate paradigm shift in the source material is understanding that emotions are not random occurrences.
What are they then?
They're highly specific data points. And hidden obsessive feelings almost always point inward rather than outward.
Wait, meaning the obsession isn't actually about the other person at all?
In a vast majority of cases, no. The person you are so intensely fixated on is simply acting as a canvas for your own psychology.
Oh, wow.
We have to introduce the concept of psychological projection, or what some theorists call the shadow self.
The shadow self.
Right. We tend to project the unlived, unacknowledged parts of ourselves onto other people.
So if I'm secretly pining after a coworker who is incredibly outspoken and charismatic,
Yeah.
it might not be that I'm desperately in love with them. It might be that I am starving for my own voice to be heard, and they just happen to represent that freedom.
That is a textbook example of projection.
Yeah.
You are drawn to the qualities they possess that you are secretly seeking to integrate into your own life.
Like warmth, unshakable confidence, creative freedom.
Or assertiveness. Alternatively, they might be highlighting your own deeply unmet needs.
Give me an example of that.
Well, a passing moment of kindness from them might trigger an avalanche of hidden feelings, not because they're your soulmate, but because you have a fundamental starving desire to be truly seen and chosen.
So we use them as a mirror to show us what we lack.
Exactly. And the literature encourages you to use this realization to fundamentally shift your internal dialogue.
How so?
You have to change the core question driving your rumination. Stop asking, why do I feel this so strongly for them?
And start asking.
What is this intense feeling actually showing me about myself? What unmet need are they highlighting?
Oh, that's powerful. That immediately stops the external bleeding.
It really does.
It moves the focus away from an attachment you cannot control and redirects it toward an internal exploration that you completely control.
And the relief that follows is measurable.
I can imagine.
True emotional clarity doesn't mean you coldly eradicate the feeling through sheer force of will. We already established that suppression doesn't work.
Right, pushing the beach ball underwater.
Exactly. True clarity refines the feeling. It integrates the data. Once you realize the feeling is actually about your own growth, the agonizing uncertainty is replaced by self-awareness.
The urgency just fades. You don't have to constantly check your phone or analyze their body language anymore.
Because you've decoded the actual message your brain was trying to send you.
That's incredible. And if the feeling genuinely is love, that love changes shape, right?
Yes, it stops being about longing and consuming intensity, and it becomes about alignment and quiet presence.
You step out of the cognitive loop of maybe and ground yourself in the reality of your own psychological needs.
You turn a source of profound internal suffering into a highly effective tool for self-discovery.
This has been such a journey. Let's summarize the mechanical journey we've been on today.
Good idea.
We started by looking at the echo chamber of silence, exploring how the brain's hypervigilance and rumination loops turn unspoken thoughts into deafening noise. We examined the pressure cooker of suppression, where ironic process theory proves that trying not to feel something only guarantees you will feel it harder.
The beach ball effect.
Exactly. We unpacked the mind's evolutionary hatred of uncertainty and how the Zygarnik effect leads us to write intoxicating, untested screenplays about people to fill in the blanks.
And fall in love with avatars.
Yeah. We learned to separate the anxiety-driven spike of intensity from the grounded reality of depth.
Crucial distinction.
And finally, we arrived at the realization that these intense, hidden feelings are not a life sentence of romantic longing, but an internal compass pointing directly at our own unlived potential.
They're a roadmap.
So the next time you feel overwhelmed by a secret affection, remember that you have the psychological tools to observe it, decode it, and create space for peace, rather than just silently suffering through the intensity.
And this raises an important question to leave you with, something to mull over as you go about your day.
I love these. Let's hear it.
If our most intense hidden feelings are actually just mirrors, reflecting our own unlived potential and unmet needs back at us, what would happen if, starting today, you begin giving yourself the very things you've been quietly waiting for someone else to provide?